In this section, you will hear a conversation between a customer and a travel agent, discussing travel options. First, you have half a minute to look at questions 1 to 6. Now listen and answer questions 1 to 6.
Hello, I'm looking to book a reasonably priced holiday. Last year, I went to South Africa for a month, and this time I'd like to explore North America, possibly Canada, but I'm also open to Europe if the prices to Canada are too expensive. I'm on a tight budget, so I'm hoping to find something affordable.
Okay, let me look into some options for you. I'd recommend starting with Canada, as you mentioned having relatives in Vancouver. That could be a great option, especially since it's a nice time of year there. We also have some special offers on at the moment, so that might work well for your budget.
That sounds good. I think focusing on Canada first would be a good idea. I can always look at Europe for a future trip. And the weather in Canada might be better suited for me at this time compared to Europe.
Excellent. Let me get those prices for Canada lined up for you. I'm confident we can find a great option that fits your budget and interests.
Great, let's look at some flight options. I'm hoping to go sometime at the end of next month, anytime between the 24th and 31st for a 3-week trip.
Okay, I have plenty of availability for those dates. And if you're concerned about the cost, you can save money if you're willing to have a connecting flight rather than flying direct.
Ah, I see. What do you mean by that?
Well, if you don't mind changing planes during your trip, the flights will be cheaper. Does that work for you?
Yes, I don't mind having a connection, as long as it's not too inconvenient.
Great. In that case, the cheapest option I have left on the 25th and has a short stop in New York, about 2.5 hours in the airport. The total round-trip price for that is £412, not including airport taxes. Does that sound good?
Yes, that sounds perfect. I have a cousin I can stay with, so I just need the flight. Can you confirm the return date for me?
Absolutely. Let me check on the return. You said you wanted 3 weeks, so the options are either the 14th or 15th. Which would you prefer?
The 14th works best for me.
Okay, I'll go ahead and book you on the flight from the 25th to the 14th then. Can I get your full name, please?
It's Jim Jackson.
Great. And can I also get a contact number and address?
Yes, it's 10 Allen Road, Oldham, and my home number is 051 430 3398.
Perfect. I have you booked on flight VN 217 from London Heathrow to Vancouver, departing on the 25th at 11:35 a.m. and returning on the 14th. That's a 20-night trip. Is there anything else I can help with?
Before listening to the rest of the conversation, you have half a minute to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
One more thing. Do you have any travel insurance in mind? We strongly recommend all our clients get some kind of coverage, even if they don't end up needing it. It provides peace of mind.
What are the insurance options you have available?
We have 2 choices, the Gold Star and the Silver Star policies. The Gold Star is our most comprehensive coverage, and it costs £21 for your trip. It covers almost all eventualities, including extreme sports like snowboarding and skydiving.
Okay, and what about the Silver Star policy?
The Silver Star is £18, but it doesn't cover any dangerous sports.
Well, for just £3 more, I think I'll go with the Gold Star insurance.
All right. Great. Is there anything else I can help you with before we finalize the booking?
Yes, actually, do you have any information on things to do in Vancouver?
Absolutely. Let me take a look. There's a Shakespeare play at the theater for $54, which is quite expensive. The City Museum is also very popular, and they have a special Japanese armor exhibit opening next month. The museum is free and open from 9 to 4:30 Monday through Saturday. Does either of those interest you?
Maybe. I'll have to look into those options more when I get there.
Sounds good. So to summarize, that's the flight booking and the Gold Star travel insurance, which comes to a total of £433. Would you like to pay by Visa?
Yes, that works for me. Go ahead and process the payment.
Excellent. I'll take care of that now. Let me know if there's anything else I can assist you with.
That's the end of part 1. You have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to part 2. In this section, you will listen to a speaker discussing property matters. First, you will have time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all today. I know that many of you already own homes and some may be thinking about buying another property in the city. I hope you find the details I share useful and informative. Today, I will discuss the property market in the city. As you might expect, city centers have the highest property prices, and as more people vie for homes in these areas, renting and buying have become more difficult. Many people dream of owning their own home one day. Owning a home gives us a sense of achievement and visibly shows what we have worked hard for. It also provides security in our old age and something to pass down to our children. However, purchasing a house, especially for first-time buyers, is becoming increasingly tough. This is not just due to rising prices, but also because a large deposit is needed. For younger people, buying their first home is often very challenging and sometimes impossible. Young couples who can't save enough for a deposit often need to rent for a long time, sometimes indefinitely. While homes near the city center have traditionally been the most sought after, people are now considering areas further away. This shift is due to several reasons, primarily because our work styles are changing. Similar to trends in countries like the USA, in some professions, such as sales and computing, people no longer need to work from an office full-time. More people are working from home, allowing them to avoid rush hour traffic and choose to live in quieter, rural areas. My company specializes in finding properties for both buyers and renters in the city. One of my main tasks is to locate investment properties for those who want to plan for their future.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have half a minute to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Investment properties are usually among the more affordable options in the market. These properties are purchased not for personal use, but to be rented out to others. Investing your savings in property can be a smart move for the future, since it generally appreciates in value over time. Many people prefer property investment over pension plans, especially given the disappointing pension outcomes in countries like the UK, where lifelong contributions can end up being worth very little. Properties typically generate capital gains, meaning they increase in value each year and often provide better returns than bank savings. However, there are risks involved. Some people buy properties when prices are high, only to find themselves in negative equity when the market cools down. Negative equity means you owe more on the property than its current market value. To avoid this, it's crucial to understand the fluctuations of the housing market. When done right, property investment can be highly rewarding. I hope this overview has provided you with a basic understanding of the property market. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, please raise your hand, and I'll be happy to help.
That's the end of part 2. You have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to part 3. In this section, you will hear a conversation between a radio host and a guest discussing conservation issues. First, you have half a minute to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen and answer questions 21 to 24.
Thank you for tuning in to our weekly conservation program. Last week, we discussed how environmental changes affect primates. This week, we continue our theme with a special guest, Professor Andrew Ripley from the USA, who will talk about the challenges faced by the cat family. Professor Ripley, thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I understand you travel extensively to study the population changes of wild cats.
Yes, that's right. We're focusing on wild cats like lions, tigers, and jaguars, not domestic cats.
Which wild cat do you find most intriguing?
Recently, I've been studying jaguars, but lions remain my favorite. They are unique for being social and forming groups called prides. Seeing a pride of lions basking in the sun is a classic image of the African savanna.
I completely agree with you on that.
Before listening to the rest of the conversation, you have half a minute to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
Could you update us on the current lion population in Africa?
It's challenging to get precise numbers, but estimates range from 30,000 to 100. With a general consensus around 50,000. To protect these lions from poachers, many are relocated to protected areas.
Which wild cat do you believe is most endangered?
Several cat species face threats from natural predators and environmental changes, but hunting is the biggest issue. For instance, tiger bones and parts are still used in traditional medicines in the Far East, leading to their declining numbers. Currently, fewer than 6,000 tigers remain in their natural habitats across Asia's forests and plains.
What efforts are being made to prevent their decline?
Experts like myself collaborate with conservation groups like the World Wildlife Fund, WWF, to shield tigers from illegal hunting. The WWF sees the reduction in tiger numbers as a disaster and is striving to protect them in countries like China, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, and Russia.
I understand that poaching isn't the only challenge for leopards. Is it true that the snow leopard lives in Asia's mountains?
Yes, that's correct. While poaching is an issue, a bigger problem is the decline in their natural prey. Their high-altitude habitats, particularly pastures, are threatened by expanding agriculture. This makes it hard for the snow leopard population to recover. However, the WWF is funding projects to help them in Nepal, Pakistan, and hopefully soon in Bhutan.
This information is incredibly interesting, Professor. We will take a short commercial break, and when we return, I have some questions about pumas and jaguars. Listeners, you'll have a chance to call in with your questions or opinions for the professor in about 10 minutes.
That's the end of part 3. You have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to part 4. You will hear a lecture on illiteracy. Before the lecture begins, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Please listen carefully and answer the questions as you listen.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see such a large turnout today. As I mentioned on Monday, the lecture on overpopulation has been rescheduled for next week. Today, we are fortunate to have a guest speaker, Donald Mackenzie, who has just completed a year-long research project in America. He is here to present his findings on the issue of illiteracy.
Hello. As sociology students, you're likely aware that a nation's development is often judged by the education level of its citizens. Most developed countries provide free, mandatory education and have strict standards for teacher qualifications. This should mean that people in countries like America are well educated. However, that's not always the case. In the United States, 42 million adults are unable to read, and 50 million have very limited reading skills, comparable to a 10-year-old. These are alarming statistics, but what's more concerning is that this number grows by about 2.25 million people each year. Although global figures are not available, the situation appears equally troubling worldwide. This rise in illiteracy impacts employment significantly. In America, welfare programs and unemployment benefits due to illiteracy cost $6 billion annually. Additionally, $237 billion in potential earnings are lost each year because many people lack basic reading skills. Post-school literacy programs, which aim to address this issue, cost around $10 billion annually, and this amount is steadily increasing. Next, let's explore the reasons behind the rise in illiteracy. Traditionally, children learn to read by first mastering the alphabet, then understanding the sounds of each letter, how these sounds blend into syllables, and how syllables form words. They were taught that English spelling follows a logical and systematic structure, and to read fluently, one had to master the alphabetic code of English words. This method helped students sound out letters and spell them phonetically. Once they could do this, they moved on to more advanced material. It was rare for teachers to use word lists or have beginners memorize whole words or stories, unlike today's whole language approach. Recent studies show that 90% of students needing remedial reading help in developed countries cannot decode words fluently and automatically. The whole language method, first used in the early 1800s to teach deaf students to read, has since been discarded by those same teachers as ineffective. English, being an alphabetic language, uses letters to represent speech sounds. Students traditionally learned to identify these sounds and the corresponding letters, then applied this knowledge to decode and understand words. There are about 500,000 words in English, but only about 300 are used frequently. In schools using the whole language method, children spend the first few grades memorizing sight words without learning how to decode the other hundreds of thousands of words. This method leads to frustration, poor spelling, and a dislike for reading. Even very bright children who struggle with memorizing word lists are placed in special education, though they simply need to learn the alphabet, its sounds, and common spelling patterns. Some researchers suggest that disorders like dyslexia and attention deficit disorder may result from reversing the normal learning sequence. So why do ineffective reading methods persist? The answer is simple: money. The market for instructional reading programs is very lucrative. Each year, publishing companies compete to sell their reading programs and workbooks, which must be replaced annually. Focusing on phonics would significantly reduce educational costs.
That is the end of part 4. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. In the real IELTS test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the listening answer sheet.